Well, hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Act 17 podcast. I am here today with a very dear friend of mine, my sister from another mister, Rebecca Smith Nash. She is here representing Love Heals Youth, which is a nonprofit local to our area, but really just turning the world upside down for the kingdom all over. So, really excited about her to have her here with us to talk a little bit more about what she's doing, about her journey, both in mental health and foster care, and then also with legislation. So, please welcome to the show, Rebecca Smith Nash. Yay. How are you, my
Hey,
sister?
thank you. Hey, I'm doing so great. Thanks for having me on today. I'm really excited to share a little bit more about our missions and just what we're doing to turn the world upside down.
I love that. Thank you. So, I want to hear about your story and what got you into tackling the mental health issue, and did what came first, your faith or the mental health? So, whichever direction you want to take that, but I would love to hear more about that.
Sure. I was very fortunate to be born into a very Christ-centered family, and so I was raised in the church. My parents have always been very active and involved, and brought us along for the journey. And couldn't be more grateful for the walk that we've shared together as a
I
family
love
unit.
your parents, by the way. They are
They are pretty
incredible.
incredible.
They probably
I
think I'm a
agree.
little weird because I just make myself at home around them, but that's why, because they're
No,
so
they
amazing
love
and I
it.
totally get it. Yeah.
Yes, no, they love that. They love being a part of everything. And so the journey to become a counselor, I'll tell you that. But just a side note, the nonprofit, I started that, and it is a full family project for us. So my sister, her family, myself, my kids, my husband, and my parents were all involved in the nonprofit. So it's really something that God led us to do, and to do together. So again, I couldn't say I'm blessed enough. So I'll just finish with that. I'm blessed. So the journey to become a counselor, I went to college and I wanted to work with kids. I've always had a special place in my heart for kids. I tell my kids all the time that children are what stitches my heart together. So I wanted to be a teacher, but there were just a few things that happened along the way. And I wound up going into counseling. I love it. I love what I do. I think that this field right now is in a little bit of a dark place, but there are some counselors that are coming out of the woodwork and in a space where they're comfortable to finally stand up and be bold. So I'm real excited actually about where our field is headed. I'm not real thrilled about where it's at, but I'm real excited about where it's headed. So I became a counselor just because I wanted to work with kids.
But what kind of specifically issues were you seeing in the field? And is that why you got into the direction that you're in?
Oh, I originally went into counseling to work with children that have learning disabilities,
Okay.
and being able to help them understand that the sky's the limit. They just need support. And I think
Okay.
sometimes families don't know how to support their kids the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really where I wanted to be. When
Mm-hmm.
I finished doing my master's, I was working on my PhD, but I didn't finish that because I was into the field and really wanted to get more focused on my career. But I started working with kids that were in foster care. And then I was working with families that are going through high conflict divorce and custody modifications, and then
Mm-hmm.
addiction and profound mental illness. And
All
what I
encompassing
saw,
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so what I found is that most of these folks, that they don't have the family of origin that was able to help them really figure out who they are and to reach their full potential, which is the exact opposite of how I grew up. So I knew what it was supposed to look like. I
Yeah.
know that having the support to really be able to thrive is so critical,
Right.
especially for children.
Yeah.
And I just saw that as being a pattern of something that's missing over and over and over again.
Mm,
So that's really what drew me to the field.
okay.
The
I love that.
field, probably one of my issues with it is a field based on psychosis. So unfortunately, I think there is a tendency for some of the folks that have had some pretty deep wounds in their lifetime. It draws them to this field, and maybe they haven't fully worked through it, or we all have skeletons. We all have baggage.
Sure.
We all have the things
I mean,
that,
most people, let's just put that out there.
right, most people are going to have that.
Yeah,
But I think that's where your walk with Christ is so critical, because God is
absolutely.
going to be there to help carry that baggage for you. And
Yeah,
this
I
is
love
not a
that.
field that's based on Christianity or any kind of religious belief. I think we need to intertwine some of that a little bit more.
Yeah, and so is that what you call yourself, faith-based counseling?
I don't
Okay,
identify as that. Now, I have been able to really bring the nonprofit into that
okay,
reality
got it.
and talk about it a whole lot more. But as a LPC, you're just trying to keep it separate. And
Mhm, mhm.
now that I've been doing it for 20 plus years, I think that I'm
Yeah.
at the point in my life and with the current climate in our culture where
Mhm.
we've got to be more bold and talk about our walk with Christ. If we
Yeah,
really want to get well and we really want to
yeah.
repair those broken pieces, only
There's
God can help you with that.
there's so much hope and healing in Christ, right? There's medicine, there's therapy, there's all the things, but there's just so much hope and healing there. So that's so
Yeah.
key. I really want to get to the meat of a couple things here, and one of them is the suicide epidemic. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing? I know you work a lot with teens. Is it typically foster care that you work with, or not particularly when it comes to the
Well,
counseling
so my practice actually has a few different, like,
components? Right? I know you have
yeah,
a whole
components.
lot
Yeah.
going on. Yes.
Yeah. So my caseload is typically hyper focused on high conflict divorce and custody modifications. And then
Okay.
the other portion of my particular caseload is to supervise up and coming interns or counselors. They have to do 700 hours in their master's degree, which is a 62-hour master's degree. And then you have, in your last 3 semesters, you have to do 700 hours of practical work,
Okay.
field work. And then
Okay.
post grad, you have to do 3,000-hour clinical
Okay.
internship underneath somebody that's fully licensed and is also licensed to be a supervisor. And so I'm an LPCS. That's what the
Got
S
it.
is for, is the supervisor.
Got it.
But my counselors work with, we have the contract with the county for DWI and drug court. So we have, it's an intensive outpatient program. And so we work with these clients for a minimum of 52 weeks. And it's very engaging therapeutic services with groups and individual. And then another part of the nonprofit or the organization is that we have the nonprofit leg, and that's working with the kids in foster care,
Okay.
specifically the ones. Now we work with all the kids in any part of foster care, but our main focus would be the kids that are in the orphanages.
Got it. So high conflict divorce, DWI, training, and foster care. Correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'm learning. I'll be your press agent. Got it.
You did a much better summary than what I did.
Oh, well. Um, as you're branching out into these four different sectors, and it seems like Love Heals Youth kind of morphed as you kind of journeyed through the counseling area. How did you discover your love for the foster care community, given that those other three areas don't particularly intertwine? I guess maybe the high conflict divorce. How did the foster
Oddly
care
enough,
community?
yeah, oddly enough, they are all more intertwined than I think what would make sense. And then we'll tie back to the suicide epidemic
Okay.
after I kind of walk through this a little bit. But so I started with foster care. When I started my private practice, I started with foster care and working with the cases and seeing these kids being split and torn away from their families. And these kids don't want that. I mean, they want what we know, and that's our family. And in our
Yeah.
mind, that's the only concept of love that they've ever experienced.
Sure.
So
Sure.
watching them come separate from their family and then be hopefully in a healthy place with a foster family, they get to experience really what love is, what being cared for feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Of the kids get to experience that. Well, that brought me into the high conflict divorce and custody modifications. And the
Okay.
kids that are going through that are going through another massive trauma. I mean, the two worst losses you're going to experience are going to be death and divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's foster care and you're being taken away from your family, that's kind of like a
Yeah.
divorce. But
Yeah.
watching your parents split up and
Sure.
then being told that one of your parents is bad or having these allegations of abuse. And so being able to see
Mhm.
kids that have truly been abused versus the kids that are going through an awful divorce and there's accusations of abuse because of
Yeah.
influence. So
Right.
there's the connection there. And then the awful pulling apart of the family in the divorce. So
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes hand in hand. And then, of course, you've got DWI and drug court and the addiction issues with
Mm.
drugs and
Yeah.
alcohol. And that actually plays into foster care as well, because sometimes those kids are there due to parents
Mhm.
being lost to an addiction. And then it becomes a generational cycle, because if the
Yeah.
kids are in and out of the system and
Yep.
in and out of their family home, and then that's all that they've ever known. And so what happens? Sometimes they fall into that vicious cycle as well.
Sure, and it's that whole, like, pathway to prison, right? Because
Yeah,
then you're given that the trauma that they're dealing with and all of the, different phases of trauma that they're dealing with. My parents were divorced when I was really young, like 9 months old, so it is
right.
traumatic for a child, and it's almost like, and maybe you see it, it's almost like you don't really realize what's going on, and you don't really feel the trauma until you get a little bit older, and then that's where the other issues come along with it, correct?
Yeah, and the lack of stability. I mean, think about the
Absolutely.
instability across all of those different populations.
Mhm.
But yeah, and going back and forth, having to pack your bags and never
Yeah,
being able to stay in
abandonment,
one
I'm
spot.
sure they're dealing
Yeah,
with, and yeah. Yeah, I've heard you tell stories about, kids with trash bags with their belongings and sleeping, on in a lobby waiting for a home. And those stories, because I'm a big picture type person. It's like, here's the statistics, here's, how many foster children end up in prison, or here's academia, here's the statistics of how many dropouts you have for foster care kids, and so I'm a statistics person. But when you paint the picture with a story about, this particular children, and I think it was something about a steak or something. I think I've heard you tell a story. Do you know this story? Could tell that story. That's such a good one, because it helps paint the picture of overall the problem and the solution, and I love that story.
so yes, this is so a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember exactly when, but Governor Abbott put out an order that children are not to sleep in the CPS offices anymore. And it took a little while to get into that groove, but whenever that happened, the kids that are called CWAP, children without placement, then were placed in hotels. So, and they're kind of imprisoned. And you know what really just infuriates me about foster care is that the kids are the ones paying the consequences for the
Yeah.
parents' choices.
Yeah.
And that is just, I think people don't realize, yeah, they don't realize that the kids are imprisoned essentially.
Hmm.
Not
Hmm.
necessarily, but anyway, so they go to these hotels and they're stuck there, and it's not comfortable. It's not, I mean, there's nothing homey about it. And
No,
while we might like to travel, you always, it's fun
this
to
is not
go,
the
but it's always,
Ritz-Carlton, is what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
no,
the
I,
Ritz Carlton, but it's not home. It's
that's
not a
right.
home.
That's right.
And so these kids, they were at a hotel, and the next day, I found out about it the next day at a meeting, and the person telling the story was like, "Oh, this is the reason I'm late. Kiddo last night didn't want to eat what they had to serve for dinner and wanted a steak, and so the staff didn't get him a steak. He got mad and he went and got water bottles and dumped them all over the computers in the business lobby." And I was like, "Gosh, why didn't you call us and say, hey, Beck, this young man wants a steak. Can you bring him a steak and talk to him?" Because I really don't believe that this young man was throwing a fit because he wanted the steak. I think
Yeah,
that it was,
he wanted attention.
everything is so controlled and I have no choices. I'm living in a hotel. I mean, this is not
Sure.
an ideal situation for anybody.
Yeah.
They have a couple of outfits and that's it. He ended up going to jail and now he's got a record, right? And
No.
so I just wanted that opportunity to come in and talk to him and bring him a steak. And of course, the staff, they were like, well, we can't give him a steak because then we're just going to enable this behavior. That's not how
Yeah.
it works. That's just not how it works. These kids need to feel like they are loved. They
And
need to know
heard.
that they are a
Yeah.
priority. They need to know that they're a child of God. And they don't necessarily take them to church. They don't talk about the
Yeah.
word. They're supposed to take them if the kids ask, but if you don't ask, then they don't go. And that
Yeah.
is a huge problem, because why would a child ask to go learn something that they may not even know anything about?
Yeah.
You don't
Right.
know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And how many
Well,
people I've learned that God is what made that difference for them in foster
yeah.
care. They've been to
Yeah.
35 funerals at the age of 32 for other peers in foster care. but the only saving grace for this person was God.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bible says, "Take care of widows and orphans," and that's what exactly we're doing. It's clear as day. It's a simple command, so it's exactly what you're doing. I love it. Really, I'm not super familiar with the foster care system. I know of other organizations that are doing it as well. I know they do it a little differently than you because they might have some strings attached to federal or government funding. So I know there's some things that go along with that. But I really got introduced to what's truly going on in the foster care system with the Sound of Hope movie. And for those that are watching that haven't seen it, go see it. It's incredible. It's about a community in eastern Texas, Possum Trot, Texas, that just a very, very small Baptist church, and you could probably tell the story better than me, but a very small Baptist church just really fell in love with just saving God's children that they were disregarded from society. And I think there was like 23 or something that ended up adopting every child that was available within a 100-mile radius, which is just an incredible story. I know that Rebecca has gotten to know the bishop and Lady Donna out there really well, and the family as well. The producers of the movie, I know she's gotten to meet them because I got to meet them through her, and really have fallen in love with the community and their heart around why it's so important. It's just simply that we are commanded to love our widows and orphans, and how important it is, because this is the next generation and it's a cycle. It's up to us to break this cycle, right? So tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Possum Trot and the bishop and Lady Donna, and how that's morphing into some really big and exciting things.
Sure. Well, what makes Possum Trot work and makes it so special is that they all love each other like family, and they
Yeah.
make each other a priority,
Yeah.
and they spend time with one another. And Eleanor Roosevelt said, if you want to change the world, go home and be with your family.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. That is exactly what they do. And if you're in the system being cared for by the state, and let's say you bring a set of kids home, set of kids, I was going to say a set of twins, but siblings home, and you're only able to take care of one of the kids. And this happens often.
Mhm.
Then one of the kids is likely going to go back. I mean, they try not to separate, but in all reality, I think it's like 50% of the kids end up getting split from their siblings. So they'll go back into the system. So I keep one goes back. Well, there's no guarantee that the siblings are going to be placed close together, except if you're in a church setting where one of the other families within the church can
Yeah.
take on the sibling. And that way the kids stay together and it's guaranteed that they're going to be together. So that is something that is really special and unique, specifically because a church is taking on the responsibility of caring for the kids just as God commanded us to do.
Is that
So,
not because when you release the ties of the government, you can set your own rules like that? Is that how you get around it? I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between when it's run by the government and when it's run by a church. I'd love to.
well, so this all happened back in the 90s and early 2000s. So
Mhm.
it was very different then from what it is now.
Mhm.
But I think that this was just an area that took on so many kids that the state just kind of
Yeah.
let them run with it. Now, they had plenty of uphill battles and other
Oh, yeah.
obstacles that are different than what we have today. Our
Sure.
uphill battles and obstacles today mainly have to do with the bureaucracy.
Mhm.
I think then it was more of a lack of resources, but
Mhm.
the Sound of Hope Act, we're trying to recreate essentially what you're seeing in the movie with allowing the churches to be able to have more oversight with the care of these kids rather than the state dictating what's going to happen.
Mhm.
So the church would become a child placing agency. And that way, when if a kid is not able to stay in the family that they're originally placed, then the church can decide which other family within the congregation the kid could go to instead of the state being able to come in and say, all right, I know this is your 26th move this year, but we're
For
going to
sure.
move again.
Oh. So I noticed in the movie, because I know movies aren't real, but this one is, taking care of foster kids is really tough, right? You're dealing with different sets of issues, emotional trauma, than you would be in other situations. I know that the movie, it was a movie and it was movified, but I can't imagine the trauma that comes along with it. The turning point for me in the film, and I don't want to give too much away for the folks that haven't seen the film, but the turning point for me is when the pastor of the church and his wife, they wanted to give up, or his wife, or one of the two, they wanted to give up because it's hard, right? And it got really, really hard. And I think at one point they had adopted like 7 kids or some very large amount, and it got very hard. It got heavy. People were getting hurt and getting lost, and their marriage was struggling, their finances were struggling, like all the enemy attacks were just coming at them, and they stuck with it. They gathered together as a community, right? So everybody in the church, they're all partnering together, and they never turned their backs on those kids. And that's what I think is so important, because whether you're a foster kid or you're not, that's a huge stance to take with a child, is just to let you know that I'm always going to be here for you. I'm never going to turn my back on you. And so I feel like that was a huge pivotal moment in the film. And that's what you are representing. That's what you guys are there standing in the gap saying, like, we're not turning our backs on you, and we're going to fight for you, and we're going to give up everything we have to make this right for you. So that's really why I love who you are and what you guys are all about.
Well, thank you. You know, that's one of the things. We're here in a legislative session, and last session is when I first started paying attention to what was going on in the making of laws.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw people on TV for all kinds of issues, but not once did I see anyone on TV for our children that are in the system. And that's when the fire really got lit underneath my tush. And I said, it's time for us to go and let those kids know that we see them, we
Yeah.
hear them, and they are a priority.
Yep.
You know, when you have children, you know, and they can be stinkers. And there are plenty of times, mine are still young, so I haven't hit the teenage years, the teenage turbulent years, but I have nieces, and I know that
Get a glimpse. Yeah.
yeah, that teen turbulence is rough, but never in a million years would anyone in their right mind think, "Oh, I'm done. I'm going to send them back." What are you going to send them back to? You don't have
Yeah.
anywhere to send them back
That's
to.
right. That's right.
And so when you see that pivotal moment in the movie, it's First Lady Donna says something about don't do that to my daughter, and then it was something clicked. She realized, wait a minute, you're my daughter too. I can't believe I just said that. And
Yeah.
that was that pivotal moment when we accept
Right.
these kids into our family, not because we're accepting foster kids, but because God created these children and they were meant to be mine. We just weren't together until now.
Yeah.
That's that pivotal moment. You can't
Yeah.
just think, oh, it's not working out, I'm going to send them back. You
Yeah.
didn't get the wrong size.
Right. This isn't a 30-day return policy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not because it looked good on the rack and not on my body. No,
Yeah.
no. These
Right.
children are your children and God made them for you. You just weren't together until today. And I
Yeah.
think that realization is critical.
Mm-hmm.
I really do believe that community support that Possum Trot experienced is
Mm-hmm.
another piece that you feel so isolated and alone because there is a stigma. But
Yeah.
we want to break the stigma. And when you give the kids that community and the family that they've been longing for, the stigma will just shatter.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that now just in the support that we get to provide as mental health professionals doing the counseling services. And we're now at a point where we're seeing the kids at one orphanage and then they're removed from that one and put in another one. And thank goodness, close by. And it's an orphanage that allows us to come in and see the kids. And so we're the stability. And we're seeing the difference in the kids as they're aging out now, where they have somebody to talk to. They have somebody to ask
Yeah.
for help.
And I love that, because that's a little something extra that you guys do at Love Heals Youth, right? So you're going into the orphanages and into the homes and loving on those kids. I know you have is it supplies? So you can get a bag of some
A
sort,
welcome
a
home bag, yep.
welcome
It's
home
got
bag.
all the essentials with full-size bath hygiene products, a blanket, a towel, a Bible, a
Yes,
journal. We have our little bear hugs
yes,
because these kids don't get hugs ever.
yes. Your little Love Heals Youth bear. Yes. And that's so great. That's such a great takeaway item, a tangible item that you can give to a foster care child. And then you're giving, you have a clothes drive, right? So you tell us about that. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. So these are our immediate impacts between the welcome home bags and because who doesn't love getting a little something to help you feel at home, right?
Yeah.
But then our clothes closet, it's a mobile clothes closet. So we have a storage unit that we keep everything there. And then we have a trailer that we have turned it into a closet. And so as we get calls that a kid's been placed in an orphanage and they only have the clothes that they walked in with on their back and that's it, or, whatever the scenario is, then we bring them a
Mhm.
welcome home bag and we load up several outfits and take that out to them. And then we have our events, our day of counseling events, and that's where we have multiple orphanages bringing the kids to us, and we do stations for coping skills, anything therapeutic. And then we have a faith partner to bring a potluck lunch, and then they get to shop at the end of the day on the clothes closet. And in addition to that, we bring the mobile clothes closet to the orphanage once a month for them to shop on there as well. So they get
I've
two to
gotten
three
to
times a
attend
month.
this, and it is so cool to see. It really is. It's like stations, and then there's fellowship, and it's really a unique opportunity that I don't know if you have to if you're looking for volunteers for that type of stuff, but it's really an incredible opportunity. Are you looking for volunteers?
We're always looking for
Okay.
volunteers. I mean, we're still so small and we are small but mighty, but we are still so small and we
Yeah.
don't have a huge volunteer pool. We need faith partners. The faith partners are so important for us to pull
Yeah.
those days off because they bring in, I mean, what better experience than a potluck lunch for these kids because they never get to have homemade food like this. In fact, we
Yeah.
just had one on Monday and some of the boys were brand new into this particular orphanage. And one of
Mhm.
them was like, these potatoes are the best potatoes I've ever had. He came
Oh,
back for seconds and thirds, and that's all he wanted were the
going with the
potatoes.
potatoes.
But I mean, they just don't get to experience
Yeah.
food like that, and so it's really pretty awesome. Um, but I mean, they get an opportunity. They don't have closets or dressers or anything like that, so we try to give them frequent opportunities to shop and get
Yeah.
new outfits, and they don't get to do that very often. But we're really working hard to remove the logistical barriers, so we take everything to them. Like they have an opportunity to come to us, but we take everything to them because
Hmm.
that's one of the hardships is having staff available to bring the kids to shop or do
Yeah.
whatever they need to do out in the community. They don't have the capacity for that oftentimes.
Sure. And one of the things I found interesting about our community, we're in Montgomery County, Texas, right? And we're kind of in suburbia. I mean, there's some rural areas here and there, but we're just outside of Harris County, which for those of you who don't know is the Houston metropolitan area. So in Montgomery County, Texas, tell us the stats on the number of orphanages and a number of children in the program in our community here in Montgomery County of 625,000 people, about 40 miles outside of Houston.
So we have about 15 orphanages just here in Montgomery County, but they open and close somewhat frequently
Hmm.
because there's issues. We have some really good ones that I would say it almost feels kind of like you're at summer camp.
Yeah.
So it's probably fun.
Hmm.
Not that it doesn't have its issues. Everything has its issues.
Yeah.
But then we have some that, I mean, it really feels like a 1930s orphanage, right?
Wow.
That we have at any given time somewhere between 350 and 450 foster kids in our county,
Hmm.
which is a pretty substantial number, but they're not all kids from here. So we have a lot of kids that are placed here from other areas, whether it's other counties or other states. And those kids are then here without any other resources other than the orphanage that they're placed in. Like they don't have any kind of an advocate or oftentimes a
Yeah.
mentor. Like they have nothing. And
Right.
so we're the only other connection to the outside world
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
Love Hills Youth beyond going to school, if they
Yeah.
are even enrolled in school. Sometimes they're homeschooled, so they don't ever even leave the campus
Sure.
of the orphanage that they're at. So
Interesting.
it's hard.
You, Yeah. And another interesting part I think is it's like as Christians, we want to take a stance on being pro life, right? But now we also need to take a stance on what we do for those babies that we've protected in the womb. So I really love who you are and what you do and what you represent. I just think the world of you personally, and then love what you do. If people want to get involved, they can tell us what they can do. They can help donate and purchase the bags. They can donate clothes, which, by the way, I love doing. Like, I go through my daughter as a teenager, and she's in and out of clothes like crazy. And there's one thing to just throw a bag together and drop it off at the box down at the Target or something, but to be able to put it in the hands of someone that you know could really use it and is in need is a whole other next level way of being able to help if you can't help financially. So I feel like everyone, there's something in your closet that you're thinking, I'll never wear this. So that's certainly a way that you can give back. But tell us some other ways that people can help Love Heals Youth.
Okay, so if you donate clothes, we take anything. Most of the kids that shop with our mobile clothes closet are between 12 and 18, and they're growing up in orphanages, so their nutrition is not all that great. But we do serve homeless shelters as well. So as our kids age out and they become homeless, we follow them. And so we currently serve 24 different organizations through Love Heals Youth. So there's always a place for everything, even little bitty clothes. Some of the shelters that we work with have families there.
Yeah.
And so we take anything.
Okay.
Another need that we have that's pretty substantial is we always are in need of volunteers to help with sorting the clothes. We'll get, again, my whole family, we're all involved. So we all get drop-offs on our front porch.
I love it.
Or even
I'm guilty. I've done it too.
even at my office, I'll come and there's a whole bunch of stuff there on the porch
And it
at my
comes with
office.
a hug and a little bit of conversation as well.
I love it.
A Texas-sized hug, though. Yeah,
That's right. Everything's bigger here.
that's right.
Even if we're not home, though, people just drop it off, and it's really pretty awesome. But we need help sorting that and washing the clothes. And we've even had schools that when they're out for Christmas break or summer break, they call and have us come and pick the clothes that have been left behind and lost and found. And so those all have to be washed. And yeah, so it's been amazing. But we always need help with that. We always need help with faith partners.
Okay.
Anytime we have activities or events coming up, we always need help with that as well. We have a concert in the fall that we do. This will be
Yes.
our third year to do that. And we
Right.
include the foster kids. So getting sponsors to help cover the costs.
Love that.
That's huge. If anyone has the financial means to be able to do that, we really want for the foster kids to be there. Since we're an organization serving the kids, we would like to be
Absolutely.
able to treat them to some things.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
all of those things are huge for us. We also do book drives and Bible drives because we want to make sure that every kid has access to a Bible. We want to make sure that every kid is able to get a book. And those are things that we put in their welcome home bags. But then when they come to see us, they're able to get new books. And of course, everything that we do is free. We
Yeah.
don't bill anybody. We don't charge anything. Everything that we do is 100% free. And we don't even do grants right now. Well, I guess we kind of do some grants through foundations. So we don't do any federal grants.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
No strings attached. I love that.
Yes.
Or very little strings attached. I love that.
Right.
And so how can people find you? Tell us your website and your social media.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, all under Love Heals Youth. You can also go to lovehealsyouth.com and read all about us on there. And then we have our bill, of course, the soundofhopeact.com. If you want to read more about the bill, you can go there as well. Yeah, you can reach out to us from any of those platforms and it goes right to me, actually.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your intel and your perspective of all that's happening in the world of mental health and foster care and truly turning the world upside down for Christ. And Rebecca Smith, Love Heals Youth, Sound of Hope Act. I'm really honored to know you, thankful for you, and thanks so much for being on the show. Love you,
Well, thanks
sister.
for having me, Tiffany, and I love you too. And I can't wait to turn the world upside down even more with you.
Absolutely. Love you, girl. Bye-bye.
Bye.